I'm calling to order the meeting of the City of Salem Budget Committee for April 29th, 2026. Can the recorder please call the roll?
Member Belicheks?
Here.
Member Nishioka?
Here.
Member Brown?
Present.
Member Manville?
Here.
Member Cohen?
Present.
Member Allen? Absent. Member Matthews?
Here.
Member Gwen?
Here.
Member Julie Hoy?
Here.
Member Fuller?
Here.
Member Vang?
Here.
Member Nordyke?
Here.
Member Varney?
Here.
Member Dixon?
Here.
Member Murray?
Here.
Member Geyer?
Here.
Vice Chair Vieira Brandel? Chair Tigan?
Here. Okay, can you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, thank you for joining us this evening for our third installment of this year's Budget Committee. We have some additions to the agenda, which include a staff report, a memo on community policing from our police chief, and a few pieces of public testimony. I would appreciate a motion from the floor to approve the additions to the agenda.
I'll move to approve.
Okay, a motion from Member Hoy and a second from Vice Chair Vieira Brandel. Oh, thank you. Member Gwynn. Is there any discussion on the additions? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying no. Okay, we'll call that a passed motion. We are going to begin tonight with public comment. We do have one member of the public signed up for comment. For members of the public who have signed up to provide comments, please state your name and your neighborhood or ward. You'll have 3 minutes to testify before the committee. If you're representing a group, we'll provide 5 minutes. The time will appear on the large screen behind me. When your time has expired, please stop your testimony. Also, no applause or crowd participation is allowed to ensure everyone is heard throughout their comments. Ms. Treppa, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Kathleen Treppa, Ward 7. Yesterday, I volunteered at Mano a Mano's twice-monthly food distribution site. Normally, we receive a pallet and a half or 2 pallets of food. That's 1,500 pounds for each pantry day. In September, when I started, we served about 70 individuals or families, and beginning of April, we served 118. The last 3 service days, we ran out of food, and yesterday, shockingly, we received half a pallet of food, not even close to being enough. Why? According to the letter from Marion Polk Food Chair, when Trump's big, beautiful bill of last fall happened, the federal government implemented massive cuts to social service funding. Oregon State and major donors stepped up and helped backfill to the Oregon Food Bank, which distributes funding and food resources through its network. Last week, that funding ran out. As a result, we got half a pallet of food. What I see twice a month is more and more first-timers looking for food. The regulars arrive up to 2 hours before the doors open. The newcomers show up a little bit later with meek looks on their faces, and they usually miss out on some food. Yesterday, we broke up packs of fruit cups. Usually, we let people take 4 or 5 fruit cups. Yesterday, the sign said 1. You could take 1 fruit cup. And then I come to council meetings, and I listen to a steady flow of needs and complaints from downtown businesses in the chamber about how much more resources they need and how many more cops they want on the streets. The mayor wants to hang flower baskets. Someone called downtown Salem's living room, and yes, it is for some, but certainly not all. And then someone suggested that when downtown is successful, the rest of the business community is. That's bullcrap. Trickle-down economics don't work. So excuse me for being frustrated and slightly outraged by the significant attention paid to one portion of the city. Even some of the councilors on Monday stated that the city should start paying attention to other areas in need. Salem residents have indicated that homelessness is the community's #1 priority. We should focus on that. And just as importantly, and if not more cost effectively, we should start working on preventing homelessness. People prioritize paying for food, gas. They try to pay their medical bills. And do you know what this is in my last 30 seconds? This is what's showing up on the food pallets. This is soy flakes. The sticker says maybe serve it with barbecue sauce. Do you want to feed this to your families? Do you want to feed this to your children? I'll leave it with the recorder in case anybody wants to take a look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Treppa. I'll note for the committee that we've also received written correspondence as listed under items 2 and 4 on the agenda and the additions agenda. The next order of business on the agenda is the approval of the April 22nd, 2026 Budget Committee meeting minutes. If I could get a motion from the floor.
I move to approve the minutes from the April 22nd meeting.
I have a motion from Member Nishioka and a second from Vice Chair Vieira-Brendel. Is there any discussion on the minutes from the meeting of April 22nd? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying no. Okay, and that motion passes. We're moving on to item number 4 on our agenda tonight, and this is to continue the deliberations of the capital improvement plan from last week's meeting. I'd like to note that we've received 9 pieces of public correspondence, and I'll now open up the floor for questions of staff and deliberations. As a reminder, as the public hearing is now closed, we won't be taking any oral testimony on the CIP. Members will have received written correspondence, as I mentioned, in their agendas and their additions agenda. So with that, any further discussion from the floor? Yes, Member Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 questions. One, I believe the Echo Earth project is in the big budget book on page 235, but I couldn't find it in the capital improvement plan. Is it in the capital improvement plan?
It is not. So it is in the budget because that funding had been in previous CIPs and rolled over into the budget. So all items that are funded are not in the CIP.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I have one other question.
Please.
Also regarding the Echo Earth project, since lack of maintenance is likely a factor in how it's deteriorated, does the city have an estimate of the cost going forward to maintain that if it was restored?
I think I would bring up the Community Services Director.
Member Dixon, Budget Committee, Gretchen Bennett, Community Services Director. I don't think we do. I'm going to venture an opinion that we would need to complete the restoration and then understand how that was completed before we had a good maintenance prediction moving forward.
Thank you.
Member Nishioka.
Thank you. Ms. Gretchen, this probably will be directed to you. So when we had our Salem Public Arts presentation, they were talking about the Eco Earth Ball being part of the collection. So then would the maintenance then be the responsibility of the Salem Public Arts, and then does that fall into the general fund?
That's another excellent question that I think we want to understand. We understand that the Eco Earth Globe is a very special and beautiful part of our riverfront park. We also understand it's the largest piece in our art collection. It's clearly a significant piece of work in need of additional partnership. Neither fund has, I think, what's needed at the moment.
Thank you.
Member Manville.
Seeing no further questions, I would move to recommend the proposed capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2027 through fiscal 23 for consideration by City Council. Or did I get those dates right? 27 through 31.
Second.
Great, we have a motion on the floor from Member Manville and a second from Member Nordijk. Further discussion now that we're done quizzing the staff on the CIP. Please go ahead.
I appreciate everyone besides the chair's patience with putting this a week late. Yes, and the staff working with me to get my questions answered for the time being. So thank you to everyone.
Other thoughts from the floor on the CIP? Okay, well, we have a motion to move the CIP to the City Council. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying no. Okay, we're going to move on then. That motion passes, and we'll go to number 5, information items. We have a couple of information items on the agenda this evening, and I'll welcome Mr. Eggleston to the podium.
Thank you, Chair Chigan. Josh Eggleston, Chief Financial Officer. You have a few items for you this evening under the information reports. The first is a staff report, which just summarizes the Budget Committee actions through last week. A memo from Police Chief Womack on community policing, and then a staff report with responses to many questions. And understandably, you guys just got that shortly after 3 o'clock. Feel free to ask those questions or refer to them throughout the evening if they're relevant, or if you have additional follow-up, we can take care of that between now and next week also.
Any questions from the floor for Mr. Eggleston on the information items? Member Manville?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, CFO. In the answer to question number 6 about the uses of the downtown parking meter revenue, you said they're restricted to economic promotion in the public parking program. And I was curious what the Salem code defines economic promotion as.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. And we can include those sections for what's included in that in code, because it is defined in the chapter for the downtown parking district. We can provide that.
I'll give people a couple seconds to read through 72 pages. Hold on. This will be maybe the first but not the last reminder for folks that as we move through tonight's meeting and move towards next week's meeting, which is when we'll, as the schedule allows, vote to recommend the budget to the City Council. Asking questions today to be ready for next Wednesday is a critical part of it. So as you go through the information in front of you, do raise the questions that you might have so that they can be answered by next Wednesday. So, yes, Mr. Dixon.
I have a comment. It relates to question 14 in the responses to committee member questions. I'm concerned that the city doesn't have a plan for rebalancing the operations fee to raise additional revenue. As the council knows, the city budget is predicted to fall below the council's fund balance policy in 2 years and to run out of money in 5 years. Without added revenue, it would take $5 million of cuts each year to keep the general fund in balance. The council is currently scheduled to revisit the operations fee and possibly other revenue options in September. I hope that the City Council will act decisively and quickly to either find the revenue needed to preserve vital services long-term or give clear notice that it plans to implement significant cuts in programs and services over the coming 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Dixon. Okay, we'll have time later in the evening for open discussion as well, but for the time being, I think we'll move on to the next order of business, which is a public hearing for our state revenue sharing. Sorry. Public meeting is now open. I believe Mr. Wharton Hess, can you provide the staff presentation?
Yes, I think it's being pulled up right now. All right. Thank you for having me back. Members of the committee, my name is James Wharton Hess. I'm an analyst in the budget office, and I'm here tonight to hold a public hearing for state revenue sharing. This public hearing was noticed in the April 2nd edition of the Salem Reporter. So the state of Oregon receives revenue from the sale of liquor and liquor licensing fees, and a portion of that revenue is dispersed to cities based on a formula that factors in property taxes, population, and income. In order to receive these funds, the city is required to hold 2 public hearings. The first public hearing allows residents an opportunity to give testimony and allow for discussion on the possible uses of these funds, and that's the matter before you tonight. And then a second public hearing that will be held during a city council meeting in June will contemplate the proposed uses of the funds. The proposed budget includes $1.8 million in state revenue sharing revenue, and that is a 16% decrease from the current budget. This revenue can be used as an offset against property tax levies, but in Salem, the funds have historically been used to offset a portion of the police patrol budget due to the correlation between police patrol and alcohol-related calls for service. Without this revenue, $1.8 million of the police patrol budget funded by this program would need to be backfilled or find another general fund revenue source. So for context, the proposed budget for police patrol in 2027 is just over $33 million, and you can see that on page 135. And staff is available to answer questions following public testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Wharton Hess. I have not received notice of anyone signed up for public testimony, but I would welcome any public testimony for folks who haven't signed up. Okay. I will now close the public hearing. Are there any questions from the Budget Committee for Mr. Wharton Hess or the city staff on the shared revenue? Yes, Member Nishioka.
Thank you. I recall last year we also had a decrease in revenue sharing, but I can't remember what percentage it was. And I'm curious as to if this has just been on a decrease, and I guess how should we plan for it?
So I think generally that is true. It has been decreasing year over year, relatively significantly actually. Some of that is due to the OLCC spending more of their money. They've just built a new warehouse, so that decreases the sort of profit margin that is shared to cities. And then the second thing is just the general decline in liquor sales as an economic trend. So,
do you recall, or could you find out? I'm curious what it was last year and maybe even the year before. I'm just wanting to figure out if it's decreasing even faster. For some reason, I'm remembering like 11%, but I could be way wrong.
Yeah, I think we can get that for you.
Yes, Member Fuller.
Thank you. Last year in the budget process, I remember this same hearing, and that this is money that is typically rolled over into if I remember correctly, it's the police budget. Is that the same this year?
That's correct. It's allocated to the police department patrol budget.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions and no one took the bait on debating a new warehouse for OLCC, then I would entertain a motion from the floor recommending the proposed uses of state revenue sharing funds.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion from Vice Chair Vieira-Brandl and a second from Member Matthews. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of accepting the motion to recommend the proposed uses of the state revenue sharing funds, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying no. Okay, we have one no vote. Thank you, Member Fuller. The motion passes. Okay, moving right along, we're at item number 7 on the agenda. Staff presentations for the Good Governance Result Area and the Safe and Healthy Community Result Area are next. Budget Manager Leinenbach will be the first up with Good Governance. Ms. Leinenbach.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Budget Committee. My name is Callie Leinenbach, Budget Manager, and I'm here to present to you this evening the fiscal year 2027 proposed budget for the Good Governance Result Area. So this area includes, oh, my presentation isn't up. I apologize. I was just going.
I like the get it done attitude. That's great. We'll take a nice breath of fresh air and wait for your presentation.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
May
Member
I
Dixon.
also ask a quick question?
Yeah,
Member
I will
Dixon,
do my
if you
best
would
to
turn
do
your
that.
microphone on.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay. So this result area includes departments and functions that support the direct services provided to the community. So those direct services are shown in the result areas that appear in the rest of the result areas besides good governance. So Good Governance has a proposed expenditure budget of $167.5 million. This result area includes support services from multiple departments, including the City Manager's Office, Finance, Legal, and Enterprise Services. There are 279.15 full-time equivalent positions that provide services in this result area. And the result area starts on page 53 of the budget book. So there were several workforce changes in this result area, but overall only one new position with all the changes. So in response to the organizational performance audit recommendations, 3 vacant positions were proposed to move from IT to the City Manager's Office, and those will be repurposed to meet communications, community engagement, and council support needs. Another position will move back to IT from the CMO, so the net increase to the City Manager's Office is 2 FTE. And then 2 different vacant positions in IT would be transferred to Human Resources, and these positions would help with the transition to the new Enterprise Resource Planning software system, and would be filled with limited duration staff to just transition use of that system. Then 1 position in the self-insurance benefits and 1 position in fleet would be moving into the general fund, and this is just to align the work duties with the funding source. And then finally, that new position, management analyst, in the liability section of the self-insurance risk fund, and this would be used to perform investigations work and reduce reliance on outside counsel for these services. So a few service enhancements and highlights to share with you this evening. We had the second debt issuance for the 2022 Safety and Livability Bond. Oop, I went too far. That occurred earlier this month. The city went through a bond rating process where Moody's affirmed the city's AA2 bond rating. This high rating reflects strong financial management practices and a low debt ratio. And this also means that the city experiences lower interest costs when issuing bonds and translates into being able to fund more projects. So Fleet Services received an award from the National Association of Fleet Administrators as second fleet in the country, and this is the 6th year that Salem's fleet ranked within the top 100. Facilities Services completed the second year of a 5-year program to phase out R22 refrigerant in all city-owned HVAC systems, as it will be banned in 2030 by the Environmental Protection Agency for its harmful impact on the ozone layer. So staff in information technology, human resources, finance, and public works have partnered to implement a new and modern enterprise resource planning software system. So this system will manage many of the city's main business processes like recruitment, employee data and benefits, inventory, purchasing and contract management, invoice payments, financial reporting, training, and payroll. With over 15,000 hours of combined staff time so far to design and test this product, go live is scheduled for this summer, so we've been hard at work on that. And finally on this slide, legal has been working to upgrade systems that provide case management and city council agenda management. These efforts will streamline processes and bring efficiencies within the legal department, and also provide standardization in format and access to agendas for city council and several boards, commissions, and committees. And with that, staff are available if you have questions.
Questions of the staff in good governance? Member Manville, then Member Blachix.
Thank you, and thanks, Kelly. I'm curious, a follow-up on the question that I submitted in writing about the pace of transition to electric vehicles. When I toured the Salt Lake City airport recently, I was like, oh, all your cool baggage handlers are plugged into the wall, and like, it's amazing. Given our climate action plan and other goals, like, I'm kind of curious as to what factors go into that analysis on why we're only going to get to something like 8% by 2035, and yeah, just tell us a little bit more about that if you can.
Yeah, I would love to ask Jim Schmidt to come speak to you a little bit more about that.
Just turn on your mic.
Are we on? Jim Schmidt, Acting IT Director. Appreciate the question. Right now, the EV market is waning a little bit for the operations type vehicles we have. So it's going to take a while to get those vehicles in there. Funding is another portion of that will delay that implementation of the electric vehicles in our fleet.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand that. I don't know if it's the microphone or there's a. Can you state it again?
Sure. So there is the waning of the EV market itself, vehicles available for the operations needs we have, and also the funding available for those vehicles. As we're transitioning to EVs as they come up for replacement. If their availability is there, we'll look at that. But there's also, we have a cost factor, how much we will expend to get EV over an ICE vehicle or a gasoline vehicle.
Thank you. Member Blachix.
Thank you, Chair. I think my question was about the fleet and the fleet awards. It sounds prestigious, and I was like, ooh, what did we do to earn that yet again? Thanks.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Just asking for a little more information about the fleet award. Like, how do we win that?
So it is an application process submitted to the NAFA organization. The awards contest has been around for over 20 years. So it covers metrics over sustainability, accountability, how you treat your customers, how you treat your staff, those kind of resources. So it's a fairly involved, complex contest, but it's a holistic look at the fleet operations. And I will say that we just got the #1 ranking this year. We just got the #1 ranking this year. So, thank you.
Yes. Give him a hand. Yes, City Manager Namburi.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. I got the opportunity to witness Jim give a presentation about it. It's also how we are operating based on the data-informed decisions for that particular operations. So congratulations to Jim and his team, and like #1 this year. So yeah, thank you for the question.
Member Matthews.
I actually had another question about the EV, just clarifying pieces. So as you walk up, I'll ask. But the first one was, so EVs, in my understanding, and I own one, it was more expensive than just the gas model when I purchased it. And so do we have any guardrails around how much more we're willing to pay for a like model EV as opposed to a gas model?
Yes, we do. In our fleet manual, we have a policy of rating of percentages that we will spend over the ICE vehicle, or internal combustion engine vehicles.
Gotcha.
So we have a process to follow for that.
So there is some sort of guardrail that says we won't go more than X amount of percentage above
Correct.
what the alternative is. And then I guess when I'm also looking at kind of the whole cost, there's also our fleet cost of staff. And so is it a one-to-one comparison? So is it take one person to work on an EV, or does it take more? Is it more costly for us when we have to work on an EV staff-wise, or is it equivalent?
We haven't actually had to work on them yet, but our plan is it will cost more to work on them because of the electrification of the vehicle. It's over 400 volts, which is deathly.
Substantial.
So we have to have 3 guys, 1 guy to work on the vehicle, 2 guys with hooks to pull the other person off if they get connected to the power.
Gotcha. So it basically increases our labor cost.
Correct.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
Member Manville.
Thank you. And sorry about getting in the weeds a little bit. Generally, EVs need less maintenance. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So I don't just, when we maintain it, I take your point. And the other question is, in this model and like that projects which one you should buy, how dynamic is it to the cost of foreign wars and gasoline and things like that change the math pretty dramatically?
So it's based on percentages, is the way we have it set up. I actually use the IRS income chart in reverse, those percentages, because they have a good system to do that. So that's how we have set it up. So yes, if this, in current conditions with the fuel prices escalating, it will affect those.
Thank you. Other questions from the floor on the good governance result area? Yes, Member Fuller.
I don't necessarily have a question. I just noticed that, City Manager, when you were talking about the staffing changes, I just really appreciated seeing you add the capacity for a position that handles constituent relations and public information. So I know that that's something that I've heard people ask for often. So thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. And we also have Francis is in that position, and she's amazing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Member Nishioka.
Thank you. Kelly, I would appreciate a little bit more information about debt service. I see 2 entries here. One was non-departmental, and then the other one I'm assuming is from bond. But could you review that just a bit?
Are you looking at a specific page, Counselor?
I'm looking at, yes, I am, 56.
Great.
Page 56. And then there's 2 entries, and then the total is on 57. Under debt service.
So you're talking about the debt service category?
Yes.
So for non-departmental, under debt service, there are some debt service payments that come out of non-departmental for internal loans that have happened.
So all internal?
Let me get to the non-departmental page just to make sure I'm covering everything there.
It's on page 62.
Oh, 62. Oh, it's the pension obligation bond, debt service. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, members and staff, for the conversation. I'm going to move us on to the next result area, if we feel ready as a committee. Member Brown.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I have a question, and it's in regards to page 79. Could someone walk us through the trust fund programs and FTE? Can you share with us what comes out of that fund and how it's best used?
Yeah, appreciate the question. So on page 79, we have a few different programs represented there. One is our tours and promotion area fee pass-through. So we collect a 2% fee on behalf of hoteliers and short-term rentals, and we pass it through to Travel Salem. We collect a little bit for administration, 5%. That's the first section. The second is culture and tourism administration. So city programs fall into that category here. And then trust fund programs and FTE for unanticipated. This is $500,000 of appropriation. There's some trusts that don't have a lot of activity and we don't always know what's going to happen. So this is a bucket of appropriation we can access if we need to.
And may I follow up, Mr. Chair?
Of course.
So, Mr. CFO, you said there was a 2% increase. Does that change every year or does it stay at 2%?
It is a flat 2% fee. It does not increase.
Wow. Okay. The next thing I want to highlight, it's not a question, but it is in regards to your office. Your office received the award for distinguished budget presentation. So just want to highlight the fact that your team is doing a great job in making sure that we are staying accountable with our funds. So thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. It's definitely a team effort.
I yield the floor, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Member Brown. And I'll just check my own comprehension here, Josh, on Member Brown's question. So the Tours and Promotion Area Fund, which we discussed as a council recently, that 2% fee on those rooms and now the short-term rentals, we're budgeting $1.25 million to pass through the city to Travel Salem, and the $66,000 is the 5% fee. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'll pass it back to you, Mr. Eggleston, to take us on to the next result area.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This next result area is safe and healthy community. With the exception of the infrastructure result area reviewed last week, the largest portion of available funding is dedicated toward a safe and healthy community. Detailed program information for this result area begin on page 115 of the City of Salem budget book. Proposed funding for the safe and healthy community result area is just over $225.8 million. Services provided in this program result area include court management and proceedings, emergency medical and fire response, police patrol and criminal investigations, public safety dispatch, radio communications. The safe and healthy community has the most positions out of all the result areas with 561.95 full-time equivalent positions. We wanted to highlight a few workforce changes. Included are 4 police officer positions that will be eligible to hire in January 2027. So they're funded for a 6-month period this year for a total of a 1-year pilot program. So they would go 6 months into the following fiscal year as well. 2 would focus on community policing downtown, funded with downtown parking revenues, and 2 would focus on investigating and reducing drug trafficking. The general fund will receive increased revenue from downtown parking and opioid settlement, making it cost neutral to add these positions for fiscal year 27. To create budget authority for the REACH program, 2 limited duration positions are proposed in the fire department for fiscal year 2027. The people serving in those positions are not limited duration. They're on special assignment. So it's a little bit different, but to create the budget authority there in that area, we're adding limited duration positions. The budget includes reclassifying 2 firefighter medic positions to a training officer and staff assistant so to support training efforts for the department, and another position is proposed for elimination to offset costs for the reclassified positions. And then also in the EMS fund, with the volume of purchasing and restocking activities that have been occurring, another buyer position is needed. There are 3 pilot programs we wanted to highlight for this result area. The first is the continuation of the Safe, Clean, and Healthy pilot through the end of fiscal year 2027. The second and third are the 2 drug enforcement officers and 2 community policing officers, as mentioned on the previous slide. The fire department is also implementing a program called Ready Rebound to support those injured on the job to heal and return to work faster. The budget also includes the purchase of a shallow water jet boat to strengthen the department's water response and rescue capabilities. And then with the move to a more diverse workforce since establishing city-provided ambulance service, the proposed budget includes the reconfiguration of sleeping quarters for staff comfort, security, and privacy. And then last, you may have also heard about AVA, a 6-month pilot program launched in the spring of 2026 to help manage non-emergency calls. Examples of these type of calls include noise complaints, parking issue, lost property, and administrative reports. I feel like we can't leave public safety without talking about call volume. So we added a few charts here that are included in the budget document. The call volume for fire service continued to increase. In 2025, there was a slight improvement in the call volume response, but the response is expected to continue to degrade in the future with the current level of staffing resources. Here are a few high-level statistics from the police department, including a significant drop in violent crime from 2024 to 2025. Also notable is the drop in traffic fatalities from 22 deaths in 2024 to 11 in 2025. And with that, staff are available to answer your questions for the Safe and Healthy Community Results Area.
Member Nordyke.
Thank you. You stated that the budget included 2 limited duration FTEs for REACH. What do you mean by limited? Do you mean for 1 year for the 26-27? I'm just curious what you mean by limited duration.
Yeah, so all 3 components of the Safe, Clean, and Healthy pilot program we're proposing to extend through fiscal year 2027. So June 30, 27, for the REACH program, the expanded HST homeless service team, and as well as the clean team.
Josh, I would take a moment to ask, the addition of the training position in the fire department, it sounded like there was a reduction in a FTE off of the response capacity. So is there a loss in response capacity, a diminishment in the response capacity because of that?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and this nuance is really spelled out in the budget document. We didn't walk through it tonight. But what we're really doing is repurposing the 3 positions that were dedicated to commercial air service, re-envisioning how that service would be provided in the future if it were to come back. So we're repurposing those positions for the training officer, staff assistant, and then the elimination of 1 position. So there's no reduction in service at this time.
Okay, thank you. I'd also just say if folks on my way to the budget committee meeting hearing tonight heard Chief Carrera and Ava, our new AI assistant, do their OPB interview. It was very enlightening, and thank you for doing such a great job with that. It's great to hear.
Hey, Chair.
Yes, Member Nishioka.
Could we take a raise of hands for that also heard it? I bet several of us. Anyone else hear it on OPB on the drive over? I guess it was just you and I.
A pretend lost dog, but a good example of its use. Other questions for the staff on this result area? Member Nishioka.
Thank you. I'm wondering if you could either speak to or have someone from the fire department explain a little bit more about Ready Rebound, and also I think it might be appropriate to have Deputy Chief Carrera speak about AVA. So whichever order.
Absolutely. Of the fire chief, address the first one.
Good evening, Dave Grubauer, Fire Chief. Thanks for having me tonight. Ready Rebound. So we do have a significant number of injuries that happen throughout the organization. It is a inherently dangerous job. Unfortunately, what happens when we do get people hurt is they get stuck in our medical system. Oftentimes, we'll have individuals who are waiting for months before they can get an image to see how they can appropriately be treated. What this program does is it connects local providers to ensure that the uniqueness of our jobs get to see specialists quickly. So generally, it's within 3 days. Very different than any other profession. We have constant staffing. So if somebody gets hurt, if somebody is sick, we fill in and we pay overtime for that. This is a way that we can get people back to work quickly and have an offsetting cost reduction. The company itself is spreading throughout the country, and in all of the communities that they're in, they've shown actually reduction in cost, workers' comp costs compared to their costs. The benefit of it, I'll just mention, the benefit of it, it's charged per firefighter, but it also includes every family member. It includes every member of our department, our dispatchers' family, as well as our emergency medical services professionals as well, at no additional cost.
Thank you.
And then I will either defer to Chief Carrera or Chief Lavelle, each one that wants to talk about AVA.
Good evening, Assistant Fire Chief Brian Carrera, Salem Fire. So about 12 months ago, Scott and I, Chief Lavelle and I, started doing research into what could we do to help alleviate some of the workload for our communication specialists and dispatchers. And so we've done an extensive research, and we brought on a company called Aurelian, and they implemented a pilot program where we have a AI communication specialist answering non-emergency calls at the dispatch center. So our goal when we started this program was to hit a 40% call volume reduction to our communication specialist there, and so far she's averaging about 60.7% effective reduction in those calls. Now we're only using 9 non-emergency lines that she's answering, but Ava is doing a heck of a job of reducing that workload on our workforce and actually getting the answers to the community faster than the normal workload. So if you are a individual that has a non-emergency problem, you call the dispatch center, you get a call taker or communication specialist that is also answering 911 calls. So they will put you on hold, sometimes upwards of 20 to 25 minutes if the 911 call volume is large. So, we average 500,000 calls a year at our dispatch center. It's one of the busiest dispatch centers on the West Coast, and AVA is helping reduce that workload for our members, as well as getting those answers to the public when they need it most. Pending your questions.
Yeah, Member Hoy.
Thank you. I just want to say I've seen AVA in action. I did a shift with the call center, and I was skeptical and thought, now what if she doesn't hear it right? But they're monitoring everything that she's doing.
Yes, ma'am.
Which is super cool. And then to realize how it works to have to be in the position to call for someone who needed help. And I got Ava on the line, and I was like, oh, it's Ava, Ava. And eventually the words that I used prompted her to send me to an actual 911 operator, because of what the person I was calling for was experiencing. So
yes, ma'am.
It worked.
It works well. We've encouraged every reporter that's inquired about it, we've encouraged them to test the system. And so far, every one of them have been resounding supportive of what they've experienced. So I have another interview, I think, later in the week, tomorrow actually, and I will encourage them to do the same thing.
Great.
Yes, City Manager.
So I just wanted to share, I had the opportunity to call Ava for a non-emergency call, personal non-emergency call. I was in and out within less than a minute with the resolution.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
Appreciate that.
That's great.
Chief, I'm curious if you have stories, good, bad, or indifferent, from Ava's interaction with the public. Like, what do you, if you're monitoring the calls, are people confused the first AI agent that I ever encountered was, in a hotel room to, get room, service to my room or whatever.
Yes.
And it was jarring. I'm like, oh, I'm not actually talking to someone.
Yes.
So I'm sort of curious, like, what you're hearing from the public about the natures of the interaction.
Well, Ava's not 100% correct. So we have had complaints, but we address those complaints in real time. So if we have an issue, the great thing about Ava is we can look at the call and we can play it back right away to find out what happens. There's a process to do that on the 911 side. So it's real time, and it's great that you can address those concerns. And again, we take we take Ava and we help educate Ava to help interact with the public better. And it's a tool to use. Now, it's not going to be the right tool every time, but with those problems that we will have or those issues that do occur, we address them right away. So there's been huge positive effects to, again, it's not just the public. Again, I want to talk about the workload of our individual members. You average 57 calls an hour on any given day. 57 calls, those individual members are working hard to help the public, and the public wants answers. And when they call the 911 center, even on the non-emergency side, those delays, again, it's not our emergency, it's not our problem, but those delays are impactful to them. And I think it's going to be impactful to the entire organization in the city going forward. We are the first department in the state to use AI in a dispatch center, and I do believe this has enterprise solutions for the city and for the state as we move forward.
I guess I don't have to raise my hand. Yeah, thank you. I think that people have legitimate concerns about AI displacing workers. And so we know, on this budget committee especially, that we don't have a lot of funds laying around to hire new folks in the positions that are, these dispatch callers call takers who are overworked. So I'm sort of curious, do you see AVA or AI tools like this displacing workers? Do they change your hiring practices if they're that effective? Or at this point, does it feel like, as you've said, just kind of a tool in the toolbox to make the job more manageable for the folks who have it?
I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't tell you what the future holds, but I do understand that our goal is not to replace workers. Our goal is to release some of the workload that they're already doing. We spend thousands of dollars and hours on overtime to be able to put qualified people in the seats to be able to do their job. And we have seen a massive uptick in sick leave, FMLA, paid leave Oregon, and it's not just due to the call volume, but I do believe that plays a factor. So if we can reduce the workload and have a better work-life balance, have individuals happy to come to work, I think that is a tool in the toolbox. So it's not a solution for everything, but it's a solution for some things.
Yeah, I just want to say I really appreciate that response, and I think saving this conversation is about the budget. So
yes,
keeping overtime costs controlled as much as possible helps our budget, but of course helping the people do those jobs and remain happy in them is very important too.
And if I do, sorry,
please.
It's not just the city of Salem, though. We also do support, 30 other agencies outside the city, and so it's helping reduce those budgets as well because it's impactful for them as well. So I agree. It's very, very important to notify that.
Yeah, I just want to add a couple of things. So when AI came in, I think it was late 2023 or we started group of 30 employees, started exploring some of the capabilities of AI and how we could bring that to the city for more efficiency. And Brian was one of the 30 employees that were part of that team. And so from day one to now, we have been very consistent with our messaging. AI is not to replace employees, are not to replace people, but the workload of the employees is something that has been unmanageable over the years. So this is really to help with the workload. Being said that, when there are vacancies in different departments, we are encouraging departments to look at how to provide that service differently. As you see some of the changes that we were able to bring to the city manager's office with the addition of positions, and I appreciate Jim and his team in the enterprise services department to look at how to be more efficient with AI technology. So we are deploying a lot of AI solutions in the city. The council summary that you get, AI writes that, but we do have humans that validate the information and send it. So it's the same message today that we have been very consistent with it over the past 3 years. This is to help with the workload and also to reduce the cost escalations over the next few years. So that's kind of what the primary goal of bringing those tools.
Thank you. Yeah, Member Hoy.
Thank you. I just want to add for context, because I've said this in council meetings, but not in this group, that 31 jurisdictions, I believe it is, 32?
32, ma'am.
Between eastern Marion County all the way to Lincoln City and
Yes,
Tillamook. So that's a little bit smaller than the size of, well, it's bigger than Rhode Island and smaller than Maryland. Anyway, it's a lot of folks served in that area, and I can't remember the number of calls per year on average, but it's a lot.
Yes, ma'am, it is. It's impactful.
Thank you, Chief. Yes, please.
Thanks, Chair. I think you answered it, but I want to hear it on the affirmative. Ava does work for all 32 police, fire, and emergency service centers in Marion, Polk, and Lincoln counties?
Right now, she supports only 9 non-emergency lines. We're doing a test pilot for 6 months. So right now, she supports all 3 counties, Polk, Marion, and Lincoln, but she's only being tested on 9 non-emergency lines.
Okay. And then more of a philosophical question for you. Has there been a cost-benefit analysis as to, do we have too many service centers that we're trying to facilitate, 32? Do we plan to grow it? Should we shrink it? Is it helping us? Are we stretching ourselves too thin? Is my ultimate question.
To be honest with you, I don't think we are stretching ourselves too thin. I mean, in all reality, the dispatch center of our size, we need more FTEs. So we actually need 15 more based on the study to be able to support the call volume and to have that full work-life balance, right? Full-time employees work 40 hours a week. Our employees work on the average of 48 hours a week. So we need more people, but it's not just the number of agencies, it's the call volume. So even if we decrease the agencies, you're still going to have the bodies to be able to run the call volume. The call volume's not going down. So if you decrease, let's say you decrease this for one agency down, we're still going to get the call volume because Salem Police, Salem Fire do generate a large number of calls. I think it said 110,000 calls just for Salem Police last year alone. So that calls for service are going to continue to increase. So no matter what, we're going to continue to need the bodies. I don't think we can decrease our workforce if we need 15 more bodies to currently affect the change right now.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Chief. I will open it back up to the floor to see if there are other questions for staff on the safe and healthy community. I see Dr. Brown, Member Brown.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of questions, Mr. CFO. And for our members, I'm referring to page 132. It's about the key intersections that have the lights that can tag your car and send you a ticket. Just for the record, I know for a fact that I have supported this fund, so it does work. My question is, are we going to have more of these lights and intersections for the city? Are there more coming up?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and it's a good question. And if you look in your information report from the additions agenda, we put together with the police department a comprehensive answer of where they would go next for intersections. There are some cost considerations, so more volume of citations generates quite a few more citations for the municipal court to adjudicate, and then also to receive those payments at the customer service center. So it seems simple to just add an intersection. We also have reserve officers that review the citations before they're actually sent out. So some jurisdictions, they don't review them, they just send them out, and they get a lot that aren't correct, a lot of returns. We have reserve officers that review every single one of them before we send them out. So we have a better success rate about actually matching that citation.
Thank you for the clarity. Just a follow-up to that. On that same page, they're not staff designated. So when you say reserve officer, are those the folks that are looking at those tickets or citations?
Yeah, that is correct. So we budget reserve officers, so they're generally retired officers that come back and help out the city as seasonal labor. So sometimes it's one or more days a week where they come and review citations, and then if needed, they come to court when they're reviewed in the court.
Got it. Mr. Chair, may I ask another question?
You may.
Thank you, sir. Mr. CFO, do you know how much money we have spent in overtime for this past year?
In totality or for a specific department?
Yes, just for fire and safety.
Yeah, we can pull that number for you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Chair, I have one more question.
Go ahead.
It will be on page 136. Mr. CFO, there are on the right column for PD, it has police other income at 215 and then police other income at 3,000. Can you walk us through what those other incomes are?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I might defer to the police department. I believe that's seizure funds.
Stand by, Member Brown.
Chair and Budget Committee members, Trevor Womack, Chief of Police, and Member Brown, I want to say I too have contributed to that fund on the camera system, so I just wanted to acknowledge that. So these are restricted funds, our trust and agency accounts, and so the other income for police, the first one, the larger number, 215, I'm confirming that it's actually fines and fees and restitution through criminal cases. You know, we get some money back from criminal cases when people have to pay restitution and so forth. And then the bigger one on the bottom is a forfeitures. Basically, when we have our partnership, we still have a small, we've reduced it greatly, but we still have one officer dedicated to the DEA task force. And when there's large drug seizures with cash involved, then we get a percentage of that forfeiture from that case. And that just goes up and down. It kind of varies depending on, you know, what happens each year.
Right. And Chief Womack, would it be fair to say, you know, I've been to, you know, the building that you work in, and I've had just a great time, you know, touring and learning. Would it be fair to say that when you do seize equipment and let's say folks don't pick it up and you ship it out, is this also where we get some of the additional funds once we sell all of that, you know, bicycles or whatever?
Exactly right. If we get up to through a process of some sort of seized property to where we tried to find the owner and we, you know, there's no, it's ours, then we can sell that and make some small money there too as well.
Got it. Chief, thank you so much. And I do want to say when it comes to those flashing lights for tickets, it looks like it's a team effort, you and me. So maybe other members are participating too.
For the safety and the city, yes.
I yield the floor, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Member Brown. Chief Womack, if you wouldn't mind. First off, just want to acknowledge your time with the city and specific to this committee, the great clarity you've brought to our questions during your time of service. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I would ask you if you could provide the committee and the community a little bit more detail about the two community service police officers that are proposed for downtown, and sort of what, you know, what we expect it would be different about their service versus a regular patrol officer, and what the community and other folks could expect there.
Thank you. I brought the wrong binder with me for this question, so yeah. Thank you, Brian.
It's like you can't pass off your answers yet. kept you on through the budget committee for a reason.
I do want to provide a little bit of background and context to it because we've been having this discussion for, I've been here as your chief now for over 5 years. There was a community policing audit that was commissioned right before I arrived, and then we received the results from that, and I believe it was April of 2021, so early on in my tenure. And there was some key findings in there. Hopefully some of you are familiar with that. So there's a thread that comes from right now all the way back to 5 years ago with that independent assessment that was done. And it talked about multiple input from our community about what this community would like to see from their police department. And this idea of community policing kind of falls within that umbrella. There's a lot of information in that report. And so what we did is we followed up with a strategic plan, the first one that we've had in over 20 years. And we incorporated all of the findings and recommendations in some form from that assessment into our strategic plan to make sure we actually tried to work on this stuff. Now we're in our second version of that 3-year strategic plan. We're halfway through our second strategic plan now. We're making great progress despite some budget and staffing challenges, but we've been laying a lot of foundational groundwork to try to implement this layer of community policing across our city. And when you think of community policing, it's teams that already exist. We recently expanded HST. That's a community policing team. They're not out chasing 911 emergency calls. They're actually doing long-term problem-solving, proactive work with collaborative partners on a specific issue. And so that's an example. Our community violence reduction initiative that we worked on for the past couple of years that's reducing violent crime in our community has multiple partners involved, and there's officers work on that too that have time to do long-term problem solving and try to get to the root causes of issues and interrupt cycles that are happening, as opposed to a reactive officer on patrol that is just responding to emergencies after things occur, solving a problem short-term and then going on to the next one. And so this whole idea here is that we're building a layer of community policing that can work on root causes and long-term problem solving and have time to build relationships with people. And so this is another step in that direction with a team dedicated downtown. Another example this directly equates to is we used to have a proactive community policing downtown that rode around on bicycles. We cut that team because this community policing also relies on you have to have standard emergency services adequately staffed. And so it's my death by a thousand cut story, but when you're operating at not enough emergency response capacity, you have to retract from these type of proactive community policing teams. And the bike team cut in January 2025 was the latest example of a long story of that happening for our department. So we're trying to find a way to step back into that work in the right way with our current policing philosophy and provide a little bit of replacement of what we lost through the bike team, but also support the work we're already doing. So this council already started Safe, Clean, Healthy Salem. And the first thing we did back in July, you'll remember after those conversations, were begin to provide an increased presence downtown and in Northeast Salem. We're still doing that with overtime assignments. We are guiding their work with that overtime assignments based on our intelligence-led policing effort. We're analyzing monthly our crime, our call volume, what's driving this, what's happening, hearing from our community members, and we're directing and guiding those resources based on that intelligence-led policing model. We want to make that permanent. So adding 2 community police officers downtown adds 2 dedicated officers that can do that work for us as far as getting ahead of crime and calls. It's more efficient and effective in the long run. If you can reduce calls and if you can stop things from happening, it's cheaper and it takes less resources. So it sounds like it is an expensive investment. Cops aren't cheap. We all know that. But it's a smart, effective way to invest with the right approach, too. This is a balanced approach. Sometimes people will think that community policing is either a soft-on-crime approach or that perhaps we can have other services that can just do the jobs of police instead, just not even involve the police anymore, when the answer is somewhere in the middle, a la HST. And so that's what this is, too. When we talk about things like ambassador programs or other outreach workers that are there, those are all part of this equation, but there is a component for police officers to be involved, and that's what we're trying to do here. The vision, again, going back to the audit, the vision that we've laid the groundwork for is we went from 11 policing districts down to 6 to have geography-based policing in our community. We did that already. It all happened behind the scenes, so that eventually we could have a layer of community policing across the community that's more geographic specific. West Salem is not downtown. North Salem is not South Salem. And so if you had some community policing officers that just aren't emergency responders. They could partner with the neighborhood associations. They could work with business owners, work with residents in this geographic area on these problems and concerns there. For example, mail theft might be a top issue in one district, while shootings come through your apartment might be an issue in a different district. And so your community police officers are able to more tailor their responses based on the needs of those individual community members in certain areas in our community. That's the vision. That would take more officers, obviously, but we're talking about 2 downtown for that exact purpose.
Very good, thank you. Member Manville.
Thank you, Chair. And just a follow-up, Chief, thank you for your service. You talked about long-term relationships. These are kind of talked about as pilot programs. So I'm wondering, when you say a long-term relationship, how long is the long in that?
That's right. I mean, it's always tenuous. I mean, we lost the bike team too after years, and so they had a lot of established relationships and work they were doing that's gone now. So it's always dependent on staffing and sustainable funding, I agree. It's a pilot program. We want to at least show proof of concept, and then we're going to find a way to fund it if we can, depending on our budget. But it's meant and intended to be a long-term strategy, yes.
Member Nishioka.
Thank you for bringing that up, and I'm wondering what kind of metrics we're looking at to understand the effects of it, and when that would be expected, like at the end of 6 months, and then we could see how will you be judging the results?
Sure, we already have some metrics already. So to the counselors, we are anticipating Assistant Chief Ditto and some of my team here are going to bring forward an informational report on our intelligence-led policing model that I just talked about, which we are using the overtime assignments for right now. We're already having some results and metrics that are coming out of that. So that's the same concept that's going to translate to these community police officers also. But we will have metrics. For example, calls for service at chronic locations, where we're able to take our top 10 locations and reduce the calls for service, where we're able to lower the crime in this specific area while we were there, things like that. I just saw an email that you all probably saw also, asking about enforcing exclusion ordinances again. We've talked about this before downtown, and so that's a community policing function. I'm not saying that's going to be the only tool that we use all the time, but community police officers have the time to actually use tools like that because they have the time and the understanding in a real reasonable, procedurally just way, where patrol officers don't. So it's another metric, is are we using tools like that we can't really use anymore to impact the safety and the calls and the crime in the area. And then just the anecdotal stories that we hear from our businesses and community members, I'm hearing those all the time just since we started the overtime assignments in July. I'm hearing a lot of positive feedback about that. So we want to have all those measures, but we are talking about identifying repeat offenders, working with property owners and businesses, coordinating with outreach and service providers, like HST already does by hosting a monthly service provider meeting. It's that kind of work. Directly responding to the complaints that involve criminal conduct, but also the ones that we get, Councilor Nishioka, you also mentioned it Monday night. You still hear from business owners that are having problems with people in the breezeways or when they're open their businesses. That's what these officers can work on as well and be more responsive to those complaints and concerns that come in. Develop location-specific strategies. There's places that I'll just use Union Gospel Mission as an example right now. We've been working with Craig Smith there on strategies on how to lower some of the chronic issues that he's experiencing in front and around his building to try to help him out as well. And that's not a 911 patrol response. That's kind of what I'm getting at. These are all the things that we'd have the capacity to deal with in a much more effective way.
Member Nordyke.
Sorry,
go ahead.
I started
Member
to raise my hand. Thank you for bringing up the ambassador program. And really, what I was hoping for is something that's kind of a balanced community policing, but also maybe less policing. That's what I'm looking for. And I know that you worked with this in your previous location, and I'm wondering if you can maybe give some idea about how that worked.
Perfect. There's traditionally, I mean, things may have changed. Maybe there's some newer models that I'm not as familiar with, but traditionally what you see in cities is they have a downtown district that they're focusing on improving with livability and safety, and there's a combination. In my prior city, we had a bicycle team downtown. That's not uncommon to have a law enforcement component that's downtown doing that work. And there was a layer of an ambassador program that was much more about welcoming, guiding people to where parking is or where restaurants are. It's that kind of can't think of the word right now for it, but not tourism, but it's that type of work they're doing to make downtown more welcoming and friendly and inviting. So that they work closely with law enforcement because it's another layer that's there. It is a positive presence downtown. But what I'm always worried about is, and we have an example from January of this year, where we arrested a trespasser. You all saw this. We did a press release about it, so it's been publicly released. But we arrested a chronic trespasser who went right back to the same location. And when a maintenance worker asked that person to move, he got stabbed and nearly killed. And so I'm not saying that's what's going to happen all the time, but there is some inherent risk with taking any sort of enforcement as far as trespassing and asking people to move along, and you never know what that risk is going to be. And police officers or trained security guards are the appropriate people to deal with that, not necessarily ambassadors. So you need the balance. You need the balance. I think we need all of that together. And also the funding. Traditionally, it's funded by some sort of business improvement district. It's not general fund, and it's also often managed by someone else, a Chamber of Commerce or a Travel Salem type organization in these cities. And you're hard-pressed to find a larger city with an ambassador program that doesn't also have a dedicated police officer component downtown as well. So it is all together. That's my experience.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Womack, and tying us back to the budget, too, in the budget hearing. Member Nordyke, and then I see Member Brown's hand up as well.
Thank you, Chief, so much. It's so nice to be able to address you at least a couple of more times, I hope, before your retirement. And thank you so much for 34 years of service to this community and to the state of California. I didn't see, this is more of a technical question, the body cameras. I wasn't sure where that was reflected in the budget book. I know that that's an important aspect of your work because you gave a presentation at the City Club, Salem City Club recently that mentioned that our body camera program has led to more arrests and less use of force. Is that right?
Not just the body cameras, but that is a fact about our organization. We monitor these things, and so we are actually arresting more people and using less force. I mean, I love that talking point. It's the truth. So we haven't stopped arresting people, but we're using less force in what we're doing so. That's positive. What we did see, I think, more connected to, body cameras do have a calming effect. Right? What I've always said is they provide accountability on both sides of the camera. I mean, if people know that there's innocence being recorded, they tend to behave a little bit differently and a little bit calmer. And so it does bring a calming effect into any situation, and we're in a lot of situations that are very heightened and emotionally charged, so that's helpful. We also seen a huge reduction in our formal complaints against police officers because now we have an accurate, objective account of every interaction. So when someone calls to complain about something, we can literally determine most of the cases, we can see exactly what happened. And sometimes it was not our agency or it just didn't happen the way the person remembers it to happen. And that saves us so much staff time because absent the camera, we would do a full-on formal investigation, hours and hours of work trying to prove whether that happened or not. And now we can often look and find out immediately a really good indicator what actually occurred. And so it's lowered our formal complaints against officers also. And then you're probably feeling it, but it's lowered our exposure to civil liability. We've had some exposure to civil liability in the past that we're all familiar with, and that's dropped way off. And now why? Because we have an accurate accounting of everything that we do. And so when there's a use of force or something that exposes us to liability, we have an accurate documentation to prove exactly what happened and defend ourselves better and lower our exposure to liability.
Great, thank you. My next question had to do with the community policing officers. First of all, I appreciate that on page 133 of the budget book, it talks about the fact that these 4 new officer positions, 2 for drug investigations and 2 for community policing, are cost neutral because we're utilizing the downtown parking fund revenue and the opioid settlement dollars. So I appreciate the fact that you and our entire budget team are looking at how to carry out these functions without adding to the budget. So I just want to commend you on that. For the community policing positions, I'm curious, what are the hours that would make the most sense for those officers? It's only 2 people, so they can't be 365, 24/7, but tactically speaking, what are the hours of service where you think they would do the most good?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to, so if this is authorized and approved, we're going to have to take a close look at what hours are best fit. Just like when we started with HST with only 2, and we couldn't have the 7-day-a-week coverage we needed, we just had to try to understand the most effective time to have those officers work. So we'll have to analyze that. We'll use call data, we'll use crime data, but again, it's going to be driven by our intelligence-led policing model. The nice thing about the overtime positions is they're very, very flexible, but you don't have the consistency of the officers either. But you can move them around. So we may say, you know, we need actually an officers working graveyard for a couple days, or we need day shift officers the next day. So you get the flexibility. So I think it's going to be a good combination of having 2 dedicated officers that we can assign more a little bit standard hours. I'd imagine it'd be more of a swing shift type, you know, whichever days of the week are most needed, and then fill in the gaps with some of those overtime assignments as well for the flexibility. So it's really going to provide a good model to address the community policing needs downtown.
Okay, terrific. Those are all my questions for the police chief, and I don't want to play musical chairs and have the fire chief come back up unless there are no more questions for the police chief. So I'll yield the floor for the time being.
Thank you, Member Nordyke. Member Brown.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Chief Womack, I do want to follow Mr. Chair's comments in regards to just you sticking around for this budget season. So thank you for all the work that you've done and the great leadership that you provided, not only with your team, but for the city of Salem. So thank you.
Thank you.
One of my questions is this, and I'm referring to page 139. And I'm going to read a statement because I know folks at home are in that space. They may not have access to this. But in that first paragraph, there's a statement. The Salem PD Department has the lowest sworn staffing ratio of Oregon's 8 most populous cities. Yet, Salem faces the 2nd highest violent crime rate in the state. And so even in the midst of all the good that we're doing, I just want people to realize that we are still working, below capacity when it comes to just folks being available to keep us safe. So my question is this. With the CVRI, the Community Violence Reduction Initiative, do we know how long that's going to continue? Like, are we budgeting that for the next 2 or 3 years, or just year by year?
We've implemented that with no budget. So that is a strategy that we've implemented by reorganizing and reprioritizing the department. That's why you have a strategic plan, for example, so you can make strategic decisions on where you prioritize your resources. I just did an interview today with, hopefully there'll be an article you'll see soon, because we reached another milestone last week and a half ago where we did another component of that strategy. We've been talking about this for 2.5 years. There's an enforcement and a criminal justice system component that we're doing. We're solving cases, we're partnering, and we're collaborating really well on the criminal justice system side to hold folks accountable if they commit violence. But we're trying to build up the prevention side as well. And so we have a lot of partners that have come beside us. We couldn't fund our city coordinator position. That was the one position that was requested associated with CVRI. We never funded that. CBEL, Salem Health, Willamette Health Council, Mano a Mano, Salem Leadership Foundation have come forward. CBEL, I'm going to say at the top only because they've stepped in to be the backbone organization. This is no city dollars. This is outside volunteer community-based funding that's happening. Just to be the backbone organization, they've taken that coordinator position and they've filled it. And we've worked with them for the past few months to implement a call-in, which is an evidence-based strategy. We're calling it a safety meeting with high-risk youth, especially young men. We're talking from 16 to 35. We started this first call-in with just 15 to 18, and we just had our first call-in a week and a half ago, an incredibly successful experience, and we're going to connect those young men into services. It was a partnership with juvenile probation as well. So between the Salem Police Department, Marion County Juvenile Probation, and CBEL, we made that piece of the strategy finally happen. That's going to continue. That's going to continue. That's part of how we're doing as a police department. We've got the team in place that's going to make sure that's carried forward, and the partnerships are established with our community members to make sure it happens. We saw a 20% reduction in violent crime last year. It was, I believe, a 23% reduction in aggravated assaults. Aggravated assaults are the type of violence that we're talking about with CVRI: shooting, stabbing, serious assaults, gang violence, street violence, youth-involved violence. That's what our problem analysis said we needed to focus on. That's what we're focused on. And we saw a huge reduction last year. That doesn't mean there's a trend happening, but it was the largest reduction we've seen in 15 years. And so something is happening, and this strategy is developing further without any more city dollars. I'm extremely proud of it.
And Chief Womack, so am I. That was the reason I was asking, because I wanted you to elaborate on just the good work that you've been doing with your team and the partnership, especially when it comes to CBEL. And so thank you. Thank you for sharing more about that initiative.
Thank you.
I only have one final thing I would like to ask, and it's on page 140. On page 140, in the very last paragraph, it deals with the past 5 years and attrition with officers retiring or relocating. My question is, for the retirement through the Hired Back program, do you know how much we budgeted for that?
It's basically cost neutral, because you have an officer that retires, and then you pay them the same wage to stay. So they are obviously receiving a retirement that's separate. We don't pay for that, but the cost of the city budget is neutral. What you do is you prevent experienced people from leaving your organization. We've hired over 80 officers in 4 years. There's so many new people coming into the organization that we do need to slow down the attrition rate a little bit to make sure we have some of that institutional knowledge with us also, to slow the attrition rate, and also to have a smoother transition with the new people coming in is extremely valuable, and it really doesn't cost the city anything.
Well, Chief Womack, thank you so much for sharing and asking those questions. I appreciate you and your leadership. Mr. Chair, I yield the floor.
Thank you, Member Brown. Other questions for the Chief? Member Cohen?
Thank you, Chair. Member Nishioka stole my question in regards to metrics. So, but I would recommend to the city manager to have stakeholder engagements, kind of like the CVRI process, or I know Councilors Nordyke, Gwynn, and Nishioka had a town hall focus on that, and I think that will get the quantitative as well as the qualitative input that we want to see for these pilot projects as we move forward in discussing their longevity. Mr. Police Chief, it's always been a pleasure running into you in various places, whether it be PDX or Safeway.
Shopping, yes.
I think you've really restored a lot of credibility to this police department, and your actions are very noteworthy, so I do want to congratulate you on that.
Thank you.
I want you to just reflect for me. The first one's not budget related, so I apologize, Chair. But what is one thing that you're proud of in your tenure here? And then the second thing is, budgetarily speaking, strategically, in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, what does the police department need to do, or what does the city need to do budget-wise in order to make this police department better?
Yeah, the budget piece at the end is I'm not sure how to solve that problem, to be honest with you. There's a structural problem with Oregon's tax system. All cities are facing it. Both of our counties are facing it right now. There's just a structural imbalance. Your costs are always going to exceed your revenue. You're going to be chasing this cliff forever. I've come to accept that. So you learn to operate within that environment. A fix would be a levy. I mean, we almost lost our library, and we fixed that temporarily for 5 years. That's how we operate in Oregon. So if we want to ever expand our police department to where I think it needs to be, where the community policing audit says it needs to be, that 60-plus officers that we need, I mean, it's just talking pie in the sky at this point, you're going to have some dedicated funding that the community is going to pay for. There's no way you're going to efficiency your way you're out of this, unless we get RoboCop. We've got Ava now at the dispatch center. We might get RoboCop, and we'll have plenty of officers at that point. But the reality is, there's going to be this budget challenge for the foreseeable future until there's some sort of funding mechanism that changes. I'm most proud of the people within my organization. They are incredible. So there's some people here with me, there's just a few. We aren't the ones that do all the work all the time. The ones that are out there like right now policing the city and while I'm sleeping at night, those are the ones I'm really proud of, 24/7, 365. And I've gotten to know them now. At first I was a stranger, but after 5 years, we know each other. And I know their hearts, and it truly is a heart of service, and they truly care about this community, and they're trying to do the right thing all the time. And the stat that Councilor Brown highlighted, when you say that we have the lowest staffing out of Oregon's 8 largest cities, yet the second highest violent crime rate, literally what that means is they're working pretty darn hard, and they're doing a darn good job. I talk about our homicide clearance rate is 100%. We far exceed the national averages on our case clearance rates. Our detectives are exceptional at what they do. We brought in advanced technology for analyzing shell casings and our camera systems, and we just innovated and stayed. We have a modernized, contemporary police department that's highly effective, full of people that do incredible work and have a true care and concern for the community.
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, thank you. Budget question?
Yeah, let's get back on the budget, people. Who's got a numbers question? Member Manville.
Thank you. When I look at our 5-year projection of being $34 million in the red, it makes, and I hear the news in Portland about them scaling back their police departments and things like this. It feels, I like to be an optimist, but it feels like some of the additional police today means fewer police in the future than even last year's numbers. Like going back towards the mid-180s instead of, and I'm curious what the impact is on the police department of that fluctuation, both in terms of morale and in terms of wasted expenses, or one-time use expenses that are used for a year and then go away, and then so it feels to me like you're trying to stand up some nice programs, but you're kind of borrowing against the future in doing that. And that's the concern, and I'm curious about what the costs are in terms of the fluctuations that move might result in.
Yeah, when I think of, so we talk about our authorized staffing all the time too, right? Which is 198 right now. We have 10 to 12 less than that. I mean, at a given time, right? So there's always vacancies anyway. But we had 26 vacancies at one point. So when I think about that, that's what it feels like if you imagine if you cut those positions from the department, and we actually tried to operate with 26 fewer officers. We've been through that. And so we clawed our way out of that hole. But what happens is you cut the bike team, you cut training. We do 40-hour week blocks for 3 months in a row each year to put every officer in the department has to go through required training. So it's a logistical nightmare sometimes, but we have to do that. And so we cut it down to about 20 hours worth of training instead of 40 for a couple of years because you just couldn't staff. You couldn't pull people off patrol to go to training. So you reach a certain level where you drastically impact operations, and then you're relying more and more on overtime. More and more. So the existing staff just worked and worked and worked. They're already really busy, like we talked about. And so there are huge impacts to cutting back that way. And then the only alternative is to cut back on serious service delivery. So you've probably all heard, especially the counselors, you've heard comments about noise response. I mean, talk about one small cutback in a service and the impact that's had on our community. I speak to that all the time, but we stopped going to certain calls, just pure barking dog calls. We don't go anymore. And we hear lots of blowback from our community about why we don't do that anymore, because we can't. And so that's the impact. Eventually, you get to a point where you stop going to things. And it can be dramatic and have really big impacts on public safety if you get there. It's a core service of the city. It's a function we need to provide adequate service for. So.
Member Nordyke.
Thanks. I did think of another question, and also for the first time, maybe ever, I actually had to file a police report. My car got keyed recently. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that response looks like. The CVRI, I know we had some startup costs for the community conversations, bringing in the consultant, all the expert analysis. Now that we're in year 3 or entering year 4, obviously are there future costs associated with the CVRI separate from funding the FTEs for the police positions themselves?
No, but I would say there's a choice that was made. So some folks ask me about drug enforcement and so forth, and we need capacity to do that. Well, we don't have capacity for everything. So through CVRI, we identified a problem with shootings in our community. We wanted to focus on it. We redirected some staff capacity to that. So there were existing staff. So what I mean is there wasn't an increased authorized budget, but we did focus a team on that type of work, which pushed away some other type of work. And so there is a trade-off there. It's not going to be reflected in the budget book. It's a prioritization of your existing resources, and that's through your strategic planning. That's where you decide to invest your resources. So I'm not sure if I answered your question. The upfront costs were very small. The consultant we brought in was, I think, $15,000, and I mean, it was just this really small, easy startup cost within the existing budget. And then a use of existing staff in a reprioritized way with bringing partners alongside you. Just on the criminal justice system side, to get the sheriff's office, the district attorney's office, the police department, your federal partners, FBI, DEA, all to agree and say, the shootings are a priority for us and we're going to focus on that. Just that sort of coordination and collaboration just greatly expands your ability to deal with the problem, but sometimes that does come at the expense of other problems. So what I would say is the cost comes in if you want to do some of those other things. So to fund DCVRI, I'm not going to be asking you for money, but if you want to add some other sort of proactive work, let's say interdict more drug dealing, we're going to need resources for that. I'll allow the 2 officers as part of prevent, treat, drug, and enforce. We need the capacity to do that other type of work.
Yeah, Member Manville.
Thank you. So given all those concerns you had in response to my question about fluctuations, why are we expanding police now when we've got a huge budget gap in the future, of which some people are claiming isn't there in public, but it's there? So why would we take that risk, I guess, is my question for you and the city manager and the staff.
For me, I'm trying to advocate for the desires and needs of this community that I've heard. This is what the community wants. This is what they deserve for their police department. I'm trying to find a way to get there. Solving the budget problem, not necessarily my issue as the police chief. I'm here to advocate for public safety and try to provide the best service I can. I'm asking for certain resource needs, and that's what's being debated tonight, really, is we're trying to take a step in the right direction for this model that we know is effective. Hopefully we've proven through some of our work with HST and CVRI and these other things that we're doing that we have the right approach, and it's going to be balanced and comprehensive and collaborative. It's not going to over-rely on arrest and incarceration, those kind of things. We take a balanced approach to the way we police, and so I'm asking for the resources to further provide that service to our community. When I look at the community survey that Councilor Tigan's always referring to as well, homelessness, crime and drugs. The second concern in our community is crime and drugs. And so I'm being responsive to that. I'm trying to impact that as much as I possibly can, and I need some staffing to do that. That's why we're adding. We're adding in a just way, I think, in a responsible way by doing a pilot. The worst case scenario on these things is that maybe we decide it didn't work and we don't like it and we stop it, or maybe we can't afford it anymore and we just end it, and there's absorbed through maybe a vacancy attrition process that happens naturally. Nobody gets laid off. And so the risk exposure is actually low for a pilot program, but the potential gain there is high. If we see that this is very effective and the community wants it and is willing to help support it, then that's a good thing.
Yeah, please.
Thank you, Member Manville, for the question. So when I know I covered this in my budget message a little bit, right? Whether it is police, fire, any service that we are providing, I think we need to continue to invest into proactive services, right? So every service has a reactive component and a proactive component. The reason to add these pilot programs, both of them, and I'll talk about the community policing side of it now, but the reason to add this is, as an organization, you want to spend less money on the reactive services, right? And part of that is to use this pilot program, and this is a proactive service, which is the community policing, and to see, can we, and I would like to monitor the number of calls that we are receiving, the number of reactive responses that we have to give. Overtime is part of it. So we will be monitoring the next 12 months to see if there is a value in this program or not. And the other piece of it is, when we are balancing the budget or providing the services 1 year at a time, It is difficult to understand what is your total cost of operations as an organization, right? So for me, I like to look at what is our total cost of operations for 5 years, right? It is not about what we are doing right now, but also what is that we are not doing this particular year to reduce the cost over the next 4 years. So the idea is to reduce the cost escalation, right? So that's kind of why you see majority of the work that we have been doing over the past 1 year, really focusing on let us be strategic and invest just enough in proactive services so that we can reduce the cost of operations for the city and reduce the cost escalation over the next few years. So that's kind of what we're looking forward with this program. And it's the same thing with the prevent, treat, and enforce. The other piece that I want to kind of highlight, Chief, I wasn't the city manager at that time, but I did come and participate in the CVRI. I did come and listen to the town hall presentations. One thing that I walked away from the consultant's presentation was every crime has a cost to this community, right? And you want to, in whatever the capacity, we're going to pay for that, right? Yeah. So the goal is to reduce the crime so that we don't pay, as a community, we don't pay a lot more, right? That's right. So that's kind of why these proactive services are important. And I'm going to advocate the same thing for enterprise services, the IT, HR, library, parks. This is something that I'm working with every department head. What can we do proactively so that we can reduce reactive services?
Traffic fatalities, too. So we had vacancies on our traffic team for a number of years. When I talk about 26 vacancies in the department, you have to staff patrol first. So you carry vacancies in your specialized assignments. So our traffic team was diminished. Record high fatalities in 2024 with 22. Last year, we finally had a full complement of traffic officers. We refocused them and directed them with intelligence-based strategies. Here's the locations you need to be. Here's the violations you need to focus on. We increased our productivity by 65% with citations and warnings. If you happen to get pulled over, don't forget we're saving lives, right? But we did increase our attention in these areas, and we cut our traffic fatalities in half. Imagine how much a traffic fatality death costs financially and emotionally and socially in our community. And we cut that by 50%. That's proactive police work. That's proactive police work. So there's so many examples. When we talk about community policing, it's this proactive police work, data-informed, intelligence-led, very smart. I'm talking about policing with a scalpel, not a sledgehammer, and we're doing it the right way. It's effective. When you invest your dollars in policing for proactive services, there are practical public safety benefits, and we've proven it over and over and over again. And so why I'm asking for this is because I know it works and because it makes our community safer.
Of course.
I just want to kind of add this, and one of the reasons why we're also recommending adding a volunteer coordinator position in the library is for the same reason, right? Because there is a proactive component of it, and we need to keep building one step at a time so that we are increasing the capacity or we are kind of reducing that cost escalation.
Yes, Member Manville.
What I'm hearing is it works. It's going to be cheaper in the long run. So I just don't understand why you're not moving existing officers over to this and not adding to our budget problems.
Because I don't have enough right now. So 80, we have a baseline minimum of 80 patrol officers on patrol. Last year's the first year since I've been here that I've been able to staff 80 officers on patrol. And so we're finally at the point where we have a little bit of breathing room with the organization. We filled our traffic officer positions. We have most of our investigative positions finally filled again. We were carrying a lot of vacancies there. We're just at a point, we're in a much better spot than we were 3 years ago. And patrol, we cannot, I've drawn a line in the sand now. I'm not taking any more officers off of patrol. It's not fair for their safety. It's not fair for call response times, for emergency call load. There's a baseline minimum that we can't drop below. We're below it today, again, because this attrition and these issues are a constant drag on us. We need to grow this department more so we can actually maintain 80 on patrol, lower our overtime costs, and start to do some of this other traditional, in a modern way, proactive policing work. And so that's what we're after. That's what I'm chasing, is a smarter, more effective, preventative model for policing in Salem without impacting our core emergency services anymore. It's dependent upon having enough emergency response capacity to respond to 911 in our community.
Thank you, Chief. I'm going to see if there's other questions. I think this is an important conversation. These are new positions in the budget. It's totally legit to have you answer the questions in depth, so thank you. But if there's other conversation to happen among the value of these, I think we have it as a committee later. I know, Member Nordyke, you had questions for the fire chief. Maybe we'll shift gears here and see if there's other questions there.
Thank you, Chief. So the question had to do with some of the stats you provided, and there was for your department. And you noted that just over 50% of your calls, your teams are arriving within 5 minutes of dispatch, and that's based on the stats for fiscal year 25. Now that you have REACH team, I know we only have a couple of months of data, and you don't have a crystal ball, to my knowledge, but I'm wondering, are you anticipating an overall better response time now that a lot of the repeat users are being responded to by the REACH team?
Forgive me for this long-winded answer, but any additional resources are going to be beneficial, absolutely. This year in 2025, we ended with the highest number of calls we ever had in our history, 36,456 calls. Just to put that in context, since 2011, we've had an over 118% increase in call volume, and our on-duty staffing has gone down by 4.6%, more than double the amount of work with less people. So any additional resources are certainly going to be beneficial. As far as what we've done to bring efficiencies into this organization to help compensate with that, REACH is certainly one of those, and I will talk about that. We brought the ambulance service back. That has certainly helped. We have seen a dramatically improved service to the community when we have the right number of ambulances and the right number of ambulance hours that are out in the community. Then we're going to have better service, and we've seen a leveling off. Also, we're working better with our partners. On July 1st, we entered into an automatic aid agreement, so we're harnessing regional resources between Marion County, Kaiser, and Salem, so we're sending the closest resources available, regardless of jurisdiction. Also, we changed our triage system so that we spent months going for years of data through our triage system, trying to send the right resource at the right place at the right time. And as of before July 1st, we sent a fire engine to almost to 98% of our medical calls. Right now, we're below 70% without compromising service and still getting the right resource to those critical calls. Additionally, we've onboarded AVA to look at other efficiencies within our dispatch center. As far as REACH, absolutely, I think there is going to be a benefit. I can tell you without, if you beg my forgiveness, we have not done our 3-month update to council, but we've been pulling stats over the last couple of days for that. And so a couple of things I will tell you. Of the highest utilizer 911 system that we keep the highest 100 utilizers, and of those that we've contacted with REACH, we've seen a 24% reduction in contacts. We've seen a 19% reduction in call volume with those people. So absolutely, we're seeing it better. Just today, REACH was actually on the Lancaster corridor. They were engaged on a patient on the Lancaster corridor, so we did not have to have an engine company that was assigned to that. 9 o'clock in the morning, 9:02 this morning, we had a second alarm structure fire in Ward 6. One of our engines would have been committed to Lancaster. Instead of that, our first engine arrived in 2 minutes. 2-minute response time for one house that was well involved with their garage, had already spread to a second home, and because of that, we had most of the department out there. They weren't assigned to some of those high utilizer users. They were able to save 2 homes, significant damage, but the damage was about $250,000, but the house saved, both of them was over $500,000 saved. They're going to be able to move back in eventually. And so we're seeing definitely there are the statistical benefits that we've seen, but the certainly the stories that we see like today, we're seeing it every day, every week. Some are smaller than that, but absolutely, we're definitely seeing a benefit in service to the community.
Thank you, Chief. Other questions from the committee for Chief Gerboth? Yes, Member Cohen.
Thank you, Chair. Are ambulances operating in the black revenue-wise?
We are. We're positive. So a couple things with that. One is we are financially solid. We have not impacted the general fund. We don't impact the general fund. We work on an accrual accounting basis, just like most companies. So we have accounts receivable that are continuing to come in. The other thing is not just are we operating the black, the ambulance system's offsetting the general fund by over $1 million this year. So we're paying dispatch fees that were never paid by a private company previously. So there's $1 million offset because we have the ambulance service.
Follow-up question?
Yeah, of course.
Are we doing transfers?
We're interfacility transfers?
Yes.
We do some interfacility transfers and some we farm out. We ask our partners to help with that. We wanted to make sure that we ensure that we provide emergency response within the community. Our 911 system is going to be solid. We're meeting compliance and we're delivering great service, which we are. And then the interfacility transfers, if we don't want to put ambulances often 3 hours outside of the city going up to Portland and back. And so oftentimes we rely on our partners to provide those.
One more follow-up.
Of course.
Regarding the transfers, I just want to make sure, are we being good partners to our partners? I'm just curious because I live in pretty far south Salem, and I've seen Kaiser ambulances multiple times. If we're forcing Kaiser to do transportation, and I don't know if it's Kaiser or Marin County, to go up to Portland and back, is that depleting their ability to respond to emergencies?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So previous to us taking over the ambulance service, we were relying on our partners a tremendous amount. Over 6,000 calls a year were going to other agencies coming into our into Salem. And so we were relying on them tremendously just to provide our service day to day. Since July 1st, when we took over the service, our mutual aid is almost non-existent because we are owning the district. We have great people that are providing great service, and we have constant staffing on our ambulances. We've put more hours of ambulance service in the system than ever before, and different than a private company. If somebody calls in sick, we bring somebody in overtime, we cover that. We never dip below those constant staffed hours. So we have a constant level of service. The reason you've seen Kaiser is because we have a revenue share agreement with Kaiser. We've taken all their revenue away because we don't need mutual aid. We're not using their mutual aid. And so we can bring Kaiser in, they can run some calls, they do interfacility transfers for us, and then they share in the revenue. So it's a win-win for both financially for us and for Kaiser.
Thank you, Chief. Member Manville, did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. That's all sounding great. Getting back to the REACH numbers, you've got percentages here, and I haven't tracked it closely enough to know, like, when the call volume from the highest utilizers goes down 18.7%, like, is that hundreds of calls that you're not, like, I just don't have a sense of the denominator and numerator here.
I'm bringing that in. We are going to do a presentation in council in 3 months. I'll give you a couple of numbers though. We have relieved a fire company 128 times since we started. They didn't need to go to the call, and they could be available for another emergency. We relieved an ambulance 81 times. So 81 times they were not needed, and we can send them to another emergency. And then 48 times those units were immediately dispatched to another more emergent calls. So we're seeing a benefit certainly throughout the city, not just in Marion County. As I mentioned in our first update, we had relieved an ambulance, and right away they were dispatched to West Salem on a cardiac arrest. So it is benefiting the entire city. I will say some of the other metrics we're tracking, you know, some of this was inspirational, or aspirational rather, coming into the REACH program. We thought we could do some great things. One of them was never in our history we've ever transported anywhere other than the emergency room. And so one of the aspirations we had was connect people with the right services and get them transported to the right facilities. when we're transporting patients through REACH, we're doing that 25% of the time now. 25% of our transports out of the REACH program are going to somewhere other than Salem Salem Health Emergency Room, which is already one of the busiest emergency rooms on the West Coast. That doesn't just impact Salem Health and freeing up an inundated emergency room, but it helps our ambulances that are sitting waiting to offload patients because they're so busy. If we can take them to another facility, that helps our emergency room, it helps our response, but ultimately it helps the people we're serving that we take them to housing services, substance use services. I think we're up to 20 different service providers within our community that we're connected with through REACH.
Yes, Member Manville.
Thank you. I appreciate your patience. How much does a shallow water jet boat cost? Not that I want to buy one.
$35,000. $35,000.
Okay. Oh, okay. So I might be able to. Yeah. That's great.
Please go ahead.
Sorry. And a question about the sleeping quarters. How many of the fire stations right now have appropriate separated sleeping quarters to support gender diversity?
Probably 7 out of 11 right now. And so Station 8, Station 8 is going to be relocated. It's in the 2022 Safety and Livability Bond. It's not even our facility, and it's not in the city. So to put a huge investment in that really wouldn't make sense. Fire station, the other fire stations, we do need to make retrofitted. Can I expand on the jet boat just for a minute? So I know it's like, why do we want a jet boat? And so obviously we do have waterways, inland waterways, as well as the Willamette Valley or Willamette River. Our water rescue team is extremely active, over 40 calls a year. We have lost some of the capability that we had from mutual aid. Polk County Sheriff actually demobbed their water rescue team. We can't use them any longer. This has been a need for a long time that we just have not been able to fill. I'll give you an example. We have 2 large boats, but they can't get into some of the smaller areas. Wallace Marine's a great example. Last year, we had a significant sewage spill in Wallace Marine, if you remember. We were doing significant water rescues in shallow water, and this would have been a boat we used. We had our firefighters were chest deep in raw sewage, rescuing people out of Wallace Marine. These are the type of reasons that we're asking for this type of equipment. It's been a long need. We've been able to count on mutual aid partners previously, but it is something that is needed for service to this community.
Thanks for the detail. Member Cohen.
Yeah, it's not pretty, but it's that's what happens.
Thank you. I'm on page 356 of the big book, and I was wondering if you could walk us through, and maybe this is Josh as well, the bad debt write-off, bad debt, Medicare, Medicaid write-off. I'm assuming it was very low in fiscal year 25 because we didn't have ambulances. In 26, it shows up very largely, and then in 27, it is increasing again. Could you explain what this is, and then are there ways in which we can look at some strategies to decrease the bad debt write-off?
I'll just do an introduction, and I'll give it over to Josh. So so understand that when we do ambulance transport, we have a fee for that. That's how we support our system, just like anyone. It's a fee for service, and we have a standardized rate. Most of our transports are done through federal system, whether it's Medicaid or Medicare. They have capitated rates, so we may charge $1,000, $2,000 for transport. Medicare only pay for $700, and so that's why there's a difference in those charges. But I'll let Josh handle it.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. We're still pretty early. This is the first year, so we really haven't identified how it's going to play out completely. So it's something we're monitoring. We don't have a lot of control over it. If someone doesn't pay their bill, we send it to collections. We write it off. Sometimes we recover it. Sometimes we don't.
Can I ask a clarifying question about those 2 responses? So one is that if we would charge $1,000, but Medicaid is only going to pay us $700, is that captured in one of these lines? Is that different than someone just not paying the bill?
Yeah, so if you look at it, the different accounts, bad debt write-off, bad debt Medicare write-off, bad debt Medicaid write-off, those are going to capture the different categories. So some are when we charge X amount and we only get paid less than that at a contract rate.
Can you tell me which one it is?
Yeah, so Medicare, 53771, Medicaid, 53772, midway through the page on 356.
Yeah, those are the really big numbers. So are those, we don't get what we usually charge, or those are the ones that don't get paid at all?
Those are the ones we don't get paid what we charge.
Okay.
For Medicaid and Medicare. So they have a federally allowed rate.
Mandated rate.
They get paid.
Okay, understood. Thank you. Scanning the crowd. Other questions for Chief Gerboth? Okay, yes. Member Varney.
Thank you, Chair. I'm always asking about GEMT, so I'm just trying to understand what the $1 million value is for the GEMT program in terms of, what is this, expenses?
I'll let Chief Carrera answer GEMT.
Good evening, Assistant Fire Chief Brian Carrera again. So the GMT cost, the $1 million cost, is we have to pay a fee in order for the state to manage the funds. So that $1 million is what we pay to get the revenue back from GMT, which is covered under CCO, which is Critical Care Organizations, and a fee-for-service policy that we contract with the state. So anytime that we transport a Medicaid patient on our ambulances, they would fall under our ability to be able to generate additional revenue through GMT to be able to offset that cost.
Okay, so we do get revenue from the GEMT
Yes,
program.
we are estimating, well, it's kind of a shot in the dark because we did it based on our predicted transports for Medicaid. For this year, for 2025-26, I estimate about $4 million in GMT. Now, it's paid by calendar year, not fiscal year, so we will generate probably $1 to $2 million in GMT revenue that will go to the EMS fund this year. Now, we're probably going to pay $500,000 for that revenue, but that is part of the contracted cost.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to thank everybody for the robust discussion. This is the largest of our, did you have one more question before we move on?
Sorry, I have not for the chief, not for the fire chief, but I have additional questions on other issues.
Okay, for our safe and healthy community results area? Okay, thank you, Chief Gerboth. Then I'll turn it to you. Member Manville.
Thank you. And I know we're taking some time, but this is the largest portion of our budget. So.
As I was just about to say, it's a fine time to have a conversation.
Question perhaps for you, Mr. CFO. Going back to the words on page 133, you claimed these, or you said the expense was, quote, cost neutral in your presentation this morning. I think you said cost contained, something like that. And it was kind of about using opioid funds or borrowing from the future. Like, why are you using that terminology for the?
Which terminology specifically? You mean cost neutral for the pilot programs?
Yeah, when you say this makes the expense cost neutral to add these positions in the next fiscal year.
Yeah, I guess it's not cost neutral, it's budget neutral for the general fund at least. So there is a cost in the opioid fund that could spend that down. I will say just contextually, we are monitoring additional settlements that are likely going to be coming into the opioid settlement fund from the secondary manufacturers.
Yes, Mr. Manville.
Thank you. A follow-up to my question from earlier tonight about the uses of the downtown parking fund being used for economic promotion, that's just in the SRC, which is the Salem Revised Code, which is something the council can just amend, right? It's nothing, there's nothing beyond council action that's required to change what downtown parking funds could be used for.
That is correct. You would have to go through a code change process.
Yes, ma'am, Member Varney.
Thank you. My question, well, I guess it's more just a few comments, or I should say confirmation on my understanding. Let's put it that way. Let's see, our total general fund resources needed are 197, but our general fund revenues 185 million, right? Does that make, is that?
If that's what you're looking at, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
I could turn to the page if you want to give me a page reference you're looking at.
Let's see. I'm doing a bunch of stuff with general fund back here. Let's see, where was I? Requirements. Let's see, 287.
Yes,
At the
absolutely.
top, the
So
requirements by object category, so total expenditures were 197, and then when I was looking at the general fund, basically revenues, which page am I on here?
Yeah, so the 185, 428, that is correct.
Okay, okay. And then when I look at revenues by object category on page 288, the general fund says 185, 428. Yeah, for revenues. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, okay, that's what I figured. And then on that same line, it says taxes are 102 million of that revenue. And are those all just property taxes?
There is the 3% marijuana tax included in that number also.
Okay. Then
The vast majority are property taxes.
Okay, okay. Because when I look at that and I think for this result area, for our safe and healthy community, the expenditure budget is 225, but general fund covers 126 million of that. But our property taxes that come in are only 102 million. Is that right?
Slightly less due to that marijuana tax, but yes, you are correct. There is an imbalance there. Just the basic police and fire response is greater than the property taxes received.
Okay. That was the confirmation I needed, because sometimes there's that misconception that property taxes are able to pay for everything, right? And the fact that they don't even cover our general fund portion of police and fire is something that I think people need to be aware of. Anyway, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Member Varney. Member Nishioka.
Thank you, Chair. To elaborate more on what Member Varney was asking, oftentimes we councilors will be speaking with our constituents or neighborhood associations, and we give a percentage. The percentage of revenue is only pays a certain amount of police and fire. Can you remind us what that percentage is? Or can someone kind of give
Yeah,
that?
we could definitely pull it. If I remember, it's like somewhere in the 80% range.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Member Vanville.
Thank you. Going back to the photo enforcement issue, looking on page 372 of the document, it looks like red light fines are projected to decrease by hundreds of thousands of dollars, and speed on green fines are to increase. Is that based on just the behaviors we're seeing? Are you seeing what I'm seeing, Josh? About 36117 and 36116 on page 372.
I do. So I see photo red light fines are actually projected to decrease, and speed on green fines are expected to increase.
Yeah, so red lights go significantly down, and speeding goes way up. Is that based on just the behavior we're seeing, or do you know why those significant changes are projected?
Yeah, so one thing that's not listed here is what we're experiencing this year. So when we build the budget for the next year, we base it on what we're experiencing this year. It's more recent than the budget. So it's likely based on current year trends of what we're seeing, and there's a lot of factors there. So the police department reviewing citations, how fast the court is adjudicating them and getting payments through, how many people are just simply paying online versus going to court. So there's a lot of variables about how fast that process happens through the system.
One more question, just a follow-up to the written question, page 27 that you'd question 27 you'd answered about the $800,000 in the costs for new traffic enforcement lights at those 3 intersections. Is that just the lights and cameras themselves, or is the $800,000 inclusive of the processing and other things? Like, what's the universe that $800,000 in costs encompasses?
I'm assuming that's just the infrastructure costs for the vendor, but we'll confirm.
Yeah, thanks for the question. We actually pay for the service for the company. So it's just the cost of, so in other words, we don't buy the camera and put it in. We contract with that company to do all that work. So there's just a contract we have with the company that we pay.
So all the costs to the city outside of that aren't included in that $800,000?
Yeah, we did mention, though, that there would be, that doesn't include any of the staffing, the city staff that would need to be added. That would be additional cost. That would just be for the system increase. Okay. And we're talking about, not every intersection right now has every approach covered, right? You might have an intersection with only one approach. We looked at 3 intersections, 4 approaches each. That's why it's a high estimate. It'd be a full coverage of all 3 intersections. It's a high estimate.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Member Matthews.
I think something that would be interesting just for the future would be to see a cost breakdown of kind of cost-benefit analysis of each one of those red light cameras. And I know there's the issue of kind of having the upfront cost, but as far as overall, are we basically actually making revenue off of them?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I will, just as context, the goal is not to make revenue off of them. The goal is really to change their behavior and see traffic fatalities go down and that behavior change. I know the police department submits reports on that to the legislature. That's certainly something we can provide. The cost breakdown, I will say, is challenging to parse out those specific citations through the court process, through the receiving process at the city. So contextually, it's a very large volume, but it often depends on who actually wants to come to court and see the judge and watch their video.
Member Gwynn.
I think tonight's the night of confessions. I, too, have experienced the whole red light camera. And I wonder if the difference in those fees has anything to do with Judge Beatty's very kind diversion program for tickets. If you have not received a ticket in 3 years, you can do a class online, and your fee is reduced significantly, just so you guys know. So, but you do have to go and see her, and you do run into people that you know.
I will say you can just go to the Violations Bureau. You don't have to see the judge to talk to someone about reducing your ticket.
But you don't get diversion, so it goes on your ticket.
Not diversion, no.
It goes on your driving record, though.
Yes. And just to respond very briefly, we have seen some change in behavior just with a new sitting elected judge. I would say it's positive. Mostly, it did change how the Violations Bureau operates. So it used to be a longer period. You have to have a driving record clear of citations. So the judge gets to decide what that looks like.
Thank you, Josh. Member Manville.
Thank you. I appreciate your patience with us, Josh, particularly me. And I'm still not entirely clear of these 3 pairs of police officers in the budget, how long those are projected in your 5-year forecast? Is it just 1 year for the homeless services folks, and then 1 year for each of the others, December for December, and the other 4 years aren't in for any of those 6 positions, or like just trying to clear?
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah. Just the final year of the pilot for the safe, clean, and healthy, for the 2 HST officers, the 2 community police officers funded with downtown parking. It's just for 1 year. Again, it has that offsetting expense, so the net impact to the general fund is 0 for the year, and then same for the 2 drug enforcement officers, with increased funding for opioid for that 1 year for HST.
Member Manville.
I think I'm down to my last 2, unless they lead to something else. Thank you. And perhaps these are questions for Chief Womack. I'm curious, like, I think most of us have heard about the leaded gasoline story on why crime spiked in the early 90s and then fell, like, as part of the reason. I'm curious as to what crime rates in 2011 have to do with projected crime rates in the future. Like, it really feels like the trend lines that are drawn on the slide shown to us, like I generally think of, I appreciate it's not a 1-year trend, but I generally think of it as a 5-year trend, or maybe a little bit longer than that. And so I'm concerned about this kind of, hey, long-term trend, it's going up, 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 and it's like down, and it's been kind of flat for the last 5 years, or like if you're fitting a trend line to something else. So I'm kind of curious as to why we're looking way back to 2011 to fit a trend line.
Appreciate the budget question. So I think that we've been looking at a 15-year rolling trend line for crime just to have a long-term look. I mean, you can go back and look 50 years if you want, but a relevant number for us is 15 years. So each year we update that. It's a rolling 15-year just to track longer-term trends, because too often you hear people say things like I just said, that crime dropped 20% last year. That's a 1-year drop. Like, how meaningful is that? Actually, that's why I said it's not a trend, but it's a significant drop. So you step back and you look at a 15-year trend line just to get an idea. To have crime, violent crime in Oregon, and especially even more so in Salem, be going up for 10 years steadily, for 10 years does mean something. 10 years of increasing violent crime. It doesn't mean you're back to where it was in 1990, but it means when you're the lowest staffed department in Oregon's 8 largest cities, and you don't add staff, and your violent crime continues to go up year after year after year for 10 years, that is meaningful. So that's why we look at that. I try to be fair and objective. I promise you now that I've never tried to manipulate facts or use data for some political reason or for strategy. I'm presenting the best, fair, objective facts that I can. You can take data and statistics and manipulate them however you want. Do we have the crime rate today we did in 1992 when I was hired? No. Thank
Member Manville, did you want to ask your last question?
If you're lucky.
I'm going to bring us home.
I'm curious, Chief, if there have been any or ongoing or recently engaged trainings or information shared with the department about the role of heated political rhetoric against elected officials or others in leading to death threats and things like that. Has that been part of the training and conversation at the department?
I think there's a lot of publicly available information that that's true. It's been in the media, threats against elected officials, threats against myself, things have increased just across the board. It doesn't matter what side of the spectrum you're on, politically or ideologically, they have increased. That's just the state that we're in as a country right now. We do work closely, for example, in preparation for the upcoming election. We did some training and some coordination with our local elections office as far as polling places and so forth to try to how we analyze threats or be prepared if we need to respond. We're definitely connected to the information that we receive from our federal partners. We get FBI intelligence briefs and so forth about what's going on across the country, what to look for, and we share that with our staff as well. But much of this is public information that we're all seeing and hearing and reading, which we're getting the same information. We do have access to some more, confidential information, but it's generally, yes, threats are up across the board, and agencies are being hypervigilant about that.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Yes, Member Dixon.
Another question for the Chief. You said that there's an increase in threats locally. Is that correct?
Everywhere across the country, and so elected officials.
That's true here as well.
Yes.
And is there an increase in action on those threats?
Locally, not that I've seen since I've been here.
But the threats are up.
Yeah, the threat environment is definitely elevated.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to bring our conversation with the staff to a close this evening on the safe and healthy community results area. Thank you, everyone, for the robust discussion. As Member Manville said, and I agree, it's a good topic to have a robust discussion on. The final item tonight under special orders of business is an opportunity for the committee to continue an earlier discussion or introduce an issue or concern for the committee's consideration. So this is our open conversation moment before we listen to any remaining public comment. I will just say, as your chair, consider that by next week we'll be taking votes on the results areas to approve the budget. So if you have outstanding questions that you need answered in order to feel prepared to take those votes next week, you can pose those questions now into the record for the staff to hear, or provide them in writing. Sooner is better than later. Member Manville.
Thank you. Josh, I wonder if there, or City Manager, I wonder if there's anything we should know about the various salary adjustments in the back, noting that some of the highest paid managers are getting 7 or 8 or sometimes 16% increases in their salaries. And certainly I know on the other side, you're paying more for you're bumping up your medical input and stuff. And you've withheld some things over the years, but I'm just curious, is there anything we should know when we're looking at those relatively large increases in some of those positions?
Yeah, appreciate the question. So just by the budget message, you can see the increases for each of the bargaining units that's included in the budget. Executive management, non-represented, we're proposing a 3% cost of living adjustment. Any other adjustments you see for each of the years are either based on the pay grade adjustment. Generally, in the public sector, it's true for the city, we have pay scales. So often you get a merit increase as well as that cost of living adjustment. Generally, they don't happen at the same time. It just happens whenever you're hired with the city. There might be a few other reclass adjustments, but there's nothing out of the ordinary.
Oops, thank you. So thank you again for tonight's extended discussion. The one more item tonight is public testimony on future budget issues. I don't have anyone signed up for public testimony, but I would open the floor to anyone for items not on tonight's agenda. Okay, well, with that, as a reminder, the next meeting will be held this time next week, May 6th at 6 p.m., where the committee will be asked to adopt the tax levy and recommend the budget to the City Council. Any other business for our committee this evening? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.